Wow, 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 look at this. Sold out crowd at the world famous Chinese Theater in the heart of Hollywood. This is how we roll in the City of Stars. The writer, the director of La La Land, Damien Chazelle. First question really, this goes back before your previous film. Let's hear it for Whiplash. But this really did start before Whiplash. You had the idea for La La Land before you even made that film, which really put you on the map. Let's start about what was your inspiration for La La Land?
Well, it was, you know, I was in college and I met Justin Hurwitz, the composer, and we just started bonding over movies and over musicals. And we moved out to LA at roughly the same time, actually, and we just started kind of much like the characters in the movie, schlepping around LA with big dreams and not really, you know, seemingly no real outlet to make those dreams come true. But just this shared passion for musicals, for movies, and the more we talked, you know, the more we kind of zeroed in on a certain kind of musical that we would love to do if we had the chance. A musical that would have big tap dance numbers and, you know, song and dance sequences, but also that would hopefully feel realistic and feel somehow grounded in reality, even though that seems like sometimes not what a musical is. You know, sometimes we think of musicals as pure artifice, but we wanted to try to do something that had some grounding in reality. And we met, I met these two young producers, Fred Berger and Jordan Horowitz, who were out in LA with us, and you know, we pitched the idea to them. They liked it. I think we all kind of realized it was going to be a long road trying to get it made, but we just started doing this. So that was about six and a half years ago now. So I made Whiplash in the interim, and then, whoa, now my voice has a real, real resonance. Because we weren't having any luck getting this off the ground.
Who finally said yes? Like, what studio finally came forward and said, you know what, this is a great idea?
So it was, Lionsgate was the place that, yeah, that I have to give them full credit for actually not only, you know, stepping up to the plate to make the movie, but also because at that point we'd started to meet, you know, a few prospective people, and very typical Hollywood terms, they'd start off very positive. You know, they tell you they just absolutely love everything about it, and then they proceed to show that that's definitely not the case. You know, they'd say, oh, we love it, yeah, we want to do exactly this. We just have a few tiny notes. First of all, it doesn't have to be jazz, right? Okay, that's like a placeholder thing. Okay, got it. Also, obviously, they need to get together at the end, so could we have a wedding sequence and stuff like that? And it would just be these kind of, you know, where eventually you'd kind of realize, okay, we're not going to be able to do the movie that way. Lionsgate was the one place that just said, okay, this is the movie you guys want to make. You want to make it in this kind of old, you know, somewhat nostalgic style, but trying to use nostalgia to comment on the present, and you want to shoot it in real locations, and you want to use jazz, and you want to have them not end up together, and yada yada. Okay, we'll let you do that. So that was, it was this rare kind of moment, and we knew how lucky we were, and we just kind of, you know, just tried to take that chance while we had it.
You know, you talk about the tone of the film, the tone being sort of a throwback to appeal to people who love those classic Hollywood musicals of the 50s, but also make it feel current and contemporary. So, you know, moviegoers today will love it, that the millennials will love it. But it is a tone that you're able to walk the fine line from start to finish. What was the challenge of maintaining that tone?
It was actually, I remember one of Emma's first questions. Emma was, you know, I met her to pitch her the movie, and she was very, you know, into it, very engaged, but she had some concerns. And to kind of, like, if she were to sum up her concerns, it would basically be, okay, so I'm reading the script and I see, you know, one moment we're like sitting at a dinner table having like a kind of very realistic conversation, and the next moment we're flying up in outer space. How does that exist?
How does that work?
Yeah, how does that work in the same movie? And that, in a way, that was the question that had to drive the entire movie, all of us, not just the actors, but every department. The solution we found was to try to make sure that every moment in the movie, every frame in the movie was somehow straddling the line a little bit. Exactly. It was never complete, utter realism, but it was never complete, utter fantasy. Ryan and Emma would play everything as though it were grounded and truthful, you know, in other words, not not heightening their performance style to fit a fantasy, but trying to really just kind of play it truthfully. And then Lena Sandgren, my cinematographer, David Wasco on production design, Mary Zoffreys on costumes, the whole team would try to kind of find a way of using real LA locations, but heighten them in a certain way, you know? So you'd get a little bit of grit and a little bit of magic in every moment.
So Ryan Gosling, how much of the playing the piano was really Ryan?
Well, on screen, it's all Ryan.
All of it.
So he worked with another jazz pianist, Randy Kerber, a great jazz pianist, and would play along to some of those tracks. And so what you hear in the movie, sometimes Ryan, sometimes Randy, but it had to be, in terms of what you saw, it had to be entirely Ryan. And my first time like seeing Ryan kind of get on the piano, this would be about like 4 months before the shoot. It didn't inspire extreme confidence in me because he would sort of like feel the notes out like kind of one note every 30 seconds or something. But he just kind of assured me and assured my composer, assured Justin that, you know, that he would learn it and, you know, he would get it and it would be fine. Meantime, in the back of my head, I'm trying to like think of, you know, plan B options of like CG trickery or like cutting around stuff or like stuff that actually we didn't really have the budget for, let alone stuff I would have wanted to do creatively. And then he just kind of proceeded to start learning these pieces, and it was such a striking kind of like before and after sort of thing because again, I vividly remember that first time I sat with him at the piano, and then I really vividly remember a few days before shooting, my kind of last check-in with him pre-shooting on the piano stage. I went in and just wanted to kind of see, you know, okay, just show me, you know, play me where, you know, just play me the pieces, we'll see where you are. And Ryan just sat down and played the shit out of these pieces.
Wow.
And yeah, and and it was amazing, and that's, you know, that's what's on screen.
Emma Stone. Emma Stone. Okay, so here in this movie, she does drama, she does comedy, she sings, she dances, she sings while she's dancing, she does romance, she breaks down, she acts like she's acting. I mean, the range of Emma Stone is more than some actors and actresses have in a career, but she does it all in one film. And just tell me about her chemistry with Ryan and her preparation and your collaboration to really flesh out Mia.
Yeah, I mean, between the two of them and all the supporting actors in the movie as well, I think I was just a tremendously lucky filmmaker to be able to film performers of this level. Emma was, I mean, she was a joy to work with, but I think the thing that's kind of unique about her is that she, again, talking about straddling two worlds, she can do it incredibly effortlessly, because I do think she has this like old Hollywood kind of both glamour and also sort of spunk to her, you know, that reminds me of like a Katharine Hepburn or a Carole Lombard or someone like that from you know, older Hollywood romantic comedies. But she's also somehow incredibly modern in every moment, very contemporary, very accessible, very relatable, and so she just kind of became this sort of anchor for the movie in many ways. I mean, both she and Ryan. And it was also this interesting thing of like her playing a version, you know, a character who in some ways is herself, you know, but maybe herself 10 years back when she first moved to LA and was doing the audition route. A lot of the auditions in the movie were auditions that were very much like auditions that she had done in her past, or that in some cases Ryan had done in his past. So a lot of this stuff was very personal, sometimes in a not very, sometimes in a not very pleasant way, because she'd be revisiting painful memories. But she just found a way to kind of, even the stuff that wasn't personal, even the stuff like flying into outer space, she found a way of personalizing, of making everything feel completely human, completely grounded. Yeah, it was kind of stunning day in, day out to see what she did.
What was behind the decision to give Mia like her own, like that she was struggling to do her own one-woman show?
Well, I mean, it was to me, the journey of Mia is a little bit someone kind of, I mean, in some ways it's the journey of both of them. It's why I guess I'm interested in stories about young artists in some cases, this end with Whiplash. It's the journey of people trying to figure out who they are, you know, and who what their voices are. So it's not artists who are kind of in the twilight of their careers or mid-career or sort of looking back on a bunch of stuff. It's people who have just really started to or want to launch into, you know, an actual vocation as an artist and are trying to figure out what is going to separate them. And so I think she goes through this process of, you know, first she's auditioning for other people's stuff, then she winds up kind of creating her own thing. And even though at the end of the movie we're not sure exactly what kind of projects she's doing, you know, we have the sense that she's kind of been able to find her own voice, and I think that's kind of what the show is about.
Every time I drive down the 110 onto the 105, I'm never going to look at that the same way again. Tell us about filming that scene, the preparation, the rehearsal for the scene that really kicked off the film.
It was, yeah, it was a lot. So I mean, it was important to me to just in general, whether it was the opening scene or not, just to try to capture things that felt sort of uniquely LA. You know, not try to recast LA as a different city. I think actually a lot of the beauty of LA comes from things that are completely anomalous about it. And when I first moved to LA, I was, you know, that would have been about 10 years ago now. I was very frustrated with being stuck in traffic, you know, all the time, and stuck on concrete overpass ramps and all the things that felt to me like, in their own way, somewhat post-apocalyptic. And yet you kind of, I think, or at least I wanted to with this movie, try to find the beauty in even that, you know. And so that's kind of what the opening scene was about to me, at least on a, you know, on a creative level, was let's try to take the thing that even the most ardent lovers of LA will still probably concede is somewhat annoying about the city, and try to kind of find the magic in that. And the sort of way in was just this idea of people listening to their radios, you know, each person in their own little musical universe, each in their own car. And could you kind of treat that as a collection of little disparate musicals that build up into one big musical number? We found this freeway over the 105 and the 110, which I discovered wonderfully when Waze told me to take it as a shortcut, and then I get a ticket in the mail a month later because it's an easy pass ramp. It's a place that has a special place in my heart.
It's also a lot better than driving on the 110 on the 10 and you're getting north on the 405. That's the worst. Sorry.
That's the one I've gotten stuck in the most,
yeah,
actually.
It's horrible.
Yeah. Those are moments where I feel much more, where I much more want to make the opening of Falling Down than this opening, which is just another great LA opening, if any of you haven't seen it. But, you know, so we found this ramp, and it really was, I mean, I have to give, you know, credit to just the team, you know, again, Linus, my DP, Mandy Moore, the choreographer, everyone kind of brought their A game, because just the logistical challenge of it was massive. You know, we wanted to do it for real, you know, so that meant 100+ cars, 100 dancers, and then even stuff that you wouldn't really think about becomes an issue, like how do you do playback up there? How do you run wires up to, you know, your nearest point of any kind of electricities all the way down at the end of the ramp? How do people go to the bathroom is another kind of thing you've got to figure out. You got to figure out where the porta potties are going to be. You got to figure out where craft services is going to be. All this stuff that kind of you don't think about when you're writing on the page, you know, and then becomes something you have to really think about when you're on there. Also, it was a heat wave when we shot, so we were there for 2 days. You know, obviously having to shoot in sunlight. Of, you know, 2 of the hottest days of the year, and our dancers have to dance on car tops, and if you know any, I mean, and everyone knows that when the sun is beating down, car tops don't get very comfortable. So you have these kind of broiling car tops, you've got the heat, you've got the ticking clock, all these things that seem to kind of conspire to make it impossible to do. But I believe, you know, and it certainly was the case here, that sometimes that can just kind of motivate people to find creative solutions. And we rehearsed a lot, and then we kind of got on location, and again, Mandy with her dancers did an absolutely brilliant job, and the camera operators, an entire team of operators did a brilliant job, and we were able to sort of get what we needed. But it was this kind of touch and go, scary but exhilarating process from beginning to end.
The other scene, talk about filming at the right time, getting the magic hour is when Ryan and Emma are filming their scene, you know, in the middle of the film, and, you know, it looked like a soundstage, but it wasn't. and it was like, I would say like a 7 or 8 minute scene, all one take, all full body, no close-ups, and it, like, you must have filmed it at just the right time, on just the right day when there was no smog, you could see the sun setting. I mean, how many times did you shoot before you got that right one?
So that scene we did over 2 nights, knowing that we would need more takes than a single kind of sunset would allow us. I mean, the thing with, you know, that scene or any of the scenes that are kind of, I mean, it was similarly when Ryan is on the pier singing City of Stars a little earlier in the movie, or a little later in the movie, sorry. We had kind of figured out, you know, we could time out how long we would have, you know, just based on earlier days. So we had about 40 minutes, you know, at most, I think, before which it would just be normal daylight, and after which it wouldn't be, you know, it would be black sky. Those scenes we would rehearse during the day, you know. I mean, Ryan and Emma were rehearsing that scene all during the summer, leading up to when we started shooting in September. But then we would kind of rehearse with the camera during the day, with the aim of trying to be kind of camera ready by the time the sun started to, you know. But when I kind of look back, and I mean, it's what really amazes me about what Ryan and Emma do is that what you don't see, kind of looking at the scene on the screen, is the utter sort of almost kind of gun to the head dread that's surrounding everything outside the frame, in the sense that you know you know you only have a certain amount of time. Every take you do, the sun is just kind of going down and down and down and down. If they take a little bit too long with a take, that's going to mean one less take you can do. If you get 4 minutes into, it's a single shot, you get 4 minutes into the take, and then, like, you know, like they fall from the bench or something, as you've wasted 4 minutes. and so it's just like one thing after another, and yet Ryan and Emma managed to make it all look completely sort of relaxed and organic and fun, you know? And that, I think, is a real testament to them. It's also a real lesson, I think, that we tried to learn from a lot of the great old musicals, was that, you know, you try to hide the work a little bit. You don't really necessarily want to see the sweat on screen. From Fred and Ginger to the late, great Debbie Reynolds to Gene Kelly, you know, what a lot of these great Golden Age Hollywood musical stars were able to do is just is that it didn't become about technique. Actually, it just became about emotion, and it became about feeling, and you could just kind of feel that effortlessly. So that was something that was actually kind of wonderful to see Ryan and Emma you know, capture.
You mentioned City of Stars. What was it like the first time Justin played that song for you?
It was, you know, Justin will kind of sometimes give me grief for the number of demos I would kind of ask for of any number of songs. That was probably, you know, it was just called Ballad at the time. It was probably demo, you know, 37BC or something, you know, because it would just kind of get into these subdivisions. And so I think, you know, like with a lot of the songs, we were kind of beating our head against the wall for a while, and then as often happened, you know, a melody would come through that just spoke to both of us. We'd play it for the producers first. It spoke to them. There were no words on it because Justin isn't a lyricist. I'm not a lyricist. So we turned to Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, who are two incredible, well, songwriters, musicians in their own right, became on board as lyricists for this movie, and they're the ones who wrote the words. You know, City of Stars and the rest of the song, and wrote all the words to all the other songs. So it was this kind of step-by-step process. It's not like the song fully formed with words kind of plopped down. But I do remember, you know, it would always start with that moment where you'd hear at least the inkling of a melody that felt like it could sustain, and then it would be a matter of building on that.
I'm going to ask one more question before I open it up to you, the audience. The question that I have is, filming the what if scene is like the best scene of 2016, in my opinion. I mean, it's just gorgeous. Did you sort of film bits and pieces of that along while you were making the rest of the movie, so you didn't have to film that scene all at once?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of divided it into two halves. The first half was just truly the what if, you know, in other words, the sort of, you know, where you'd see scenes that you'd seen before, but now they were kind of skewed a bit. So that stuff we would just be shooting during the shoot, which was sometimes a somewhat, you know, funny process, because we'd kind of, you know, shoot the real version of a scene. and then we'd have to remind ourselves before wrapping up and leaving, oh, we got to do the fantasy version of that. So Ryan, come back here, but this time you smile, and John, come back here, but you're going to do a little spin here, and Emma, and nothing else would change. It would just be a matter of we wanted to actually keep the lighting, the sets, everything the same, so that all that changed was just what the performers were actually doing. So that was kind of done throughout, and then at the end of the shoot, we all grouped onto a soundstage. It was the only part of the movie that we really shot on sound stages to do the whole kind of the fully fantastical part of that with painted backdrops and all that kind of very obvious sort of artifice. And that was more or less how we ended the shoot. Was those last couple days filming with all those dancers and all those paintings that our production designers had put together.
Let's open it up to the audience. Who's got a question? Who's got a question? Yes, you right there.
What's next for you in terms of directing and writing?
Great question. Great question. What is next for you, Damien Chazelle, in terms of directing and writing? I know what it is. So tell us.
That's a big lead up. The next thing, I'm doing a movie about Neil Armstrong and the moon landing, which she'll be a complete departure. Ironically, it was what I met. I met Ryan originally. I've been working on that one for a couple of years now, and I met Ryan Gosling originally to talk about that. And now we look back and joke that I don't think we talked about Neil Armstrong at all at that dinner because he mentioned casually that he liked Gene Kelly movies, and I sort of leaned in and went, oh, really? Well, I just happened to, and then, that him doing La La Land came from that. So,
Wow.
So that'll be the next one, yeah.
Great question. Who else has a question? Yes, right over. You know what? Since you're in the front row, I'm going to give you the mic.
So you kind of talked about when you were trying to pitch the movie, and you ended up kind of Casablancaing us, as I call it. You didn't have them end up together. Why was that so important to you? Why didn't you want the other typical musical ending, the big wedding, and everyone cheering as they run off, just married?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I did want that, but I wanted that in that frame, like in the what if frame. In other words, the sort of idea for me was, I wanted to do a musical that ultimately would kind of play with the form a little bit and maybe comment on what we expect from the form and not necessarily go there and show the ways in which, to me, it was all about how you balance dreams and real life, which as a movie lover, a lot of times our dreams, I think, are kind of refracted through movies, and that's kind of the movie way is how we sort of would love life to unspool. So it did feel to me actually kind of appropriate and it was always the kind of way we envisioned it, to sort of end with a reality that I think, while a very optimistic reality, is not a completely happy ending, and then sort of give you the completely ribbons tied happy ending, but in this through purely fantasy, through this moment that we kind of know is not real.
I also feel like there's something to be said about how the ambition that they had was they were attracted to the ambition that they had to follow their dreams, but that same ambition is what ultimately drew them apart.
Yeah, which I think is, that sort of balance as well between kind of life and work, or life and art, I think interests me. And also I think this idea of two people who, okay, maybe they're not going to be together, they don't have the happily ever after ending, but that doesn't lessen the moment that they had together. This idea of two people coming together, that sometimes you meet someone for even just a fleeting moment in your life, but that person can change everything and kind of help you become who you later become. That idea felt very sort of potent and in its own way romantic to me.
Okay, who's got a question on this side? Yes, you right there in the hat. Yep.
What was the step that changed your life as a filmmaker?
Which one?
What was the step that you took
Oh.
in your life as a filmmaker?
What was the question?
What step did I take that
Oh.
changed my life as a filmmaker?
Good question.
I think on the one hand, when it comes to filmmaking, I've always wanted to make movies. I can't really. That was I was a very tunnel vision kind of kid, and so I don't have that sort of moment that sort of inspired me to become a filmmaker in the back of my head. But I do know that. I think there was a moment where I kind of realized that making stuff personal was really the way to actually do what I wanted to do. And maybe it had been in the back of my head for a while, but there, you know, I came to LA and I started doing a lot of sort of work for hire just to kind of get my foot in the door. A lot of writing for hire, a lot of rewriting for hire, and I think there's that sort of moment where you're kind of on the outside of the industry, and I was so desperate to kind of get in that I was kind of probably willing to, you know, if I'd been given a chance to direct something, I probably would have taken anything. And then I think there came a certain moment where I sort of realized, actually, sometimes it's actually good to hold out. Sometimes it's good to actually just focus on what's personal to you. And maybe what's personal to you is super commercial, but maybe it's not. Maybe it seems like something that, you know, like a movie about jazz drumming or something, you know, that seems like something that no one would want to see, but you have to kind of hold on to that if it's what speaks to you. In a way, it seems like an intuitive, somewhat obvious lesson, but I kind of had to learn it for myself, especially living in LA, where I think you can become very obsessed. You can start to think that filmmaking is something that it's not, that it is all about, you know, meetings and paychecks, or, you know, kind of like studio lot visits or whatever. It can start to become very artificial and kind of divorced from what it was when you first wanted to make movies, which is just wanting to tell stories, you know, and just wanting to express yourself, and kind of regardless of what the outcome would be. I think I had to relearn that once I came here a little bit.
Just got a question on this side. Yes, right there. Nice and loud, please. You. You. Your interest in jazz. Obviously, Whiplash, and now this movie. You obviously have an interest in jazz.
Actually, no, I hate jazz. I have no interest. I was, actually jazz was, well, it happened to be the music that was just kind of playing in the household a bunch, mainly because my dad was just a jazz obsessive, and so I grew up with it playing, and I also happened to be living in a town when I grew up where there was actually a really, for a small town especially, a really thriving jazz community, especially jazz education. Great jazz program in the high school, great jazz teachers throughout. So I just kind of got into it almost by happenstance. But then at a certain point, especially when I started high school, I became really, really obsessed and really sort of dove in. Jazz drumming specifically was kind of was what became my passion, and it's probably the only thing I've ever been as passionate about as movies. You know, I don't play that much anymore actually, but it remains just a passion for me. I mean, that definitely speaks for why I've turned to it as subject matter, you know, a few times. Just loving the music itself, but also being, I think, interested in kind of what jazz means today. And you know, it doesn't have to be jazz. It could be any art form that is sort of that's labeled, you know, that seems marginalized today. Any art form that used to be kind of the popular language of the world and now isn't. What does that do to young people who get into that today? What kind of burden does that put on them? What kind of torch do they have to carry? All those sort of conflicts, all that kind of drama within it, I find fascinating, aside from just loving the music.
Last question. And I need to ask you just because it's just a beautiful scene that really wraps up the film, Emma Stone, Here's to the Fools Who Dream. Tell me about filming that scene. How much preparation she did, how many takes you sort of had to do to nail the scene that you used in the film.
In a way, actually, playing a kind of very rough demo of the song, that song for her was, I think, as much as anything, was the thing that made her want to do the movie. So right from the very beginning, way before shooting, she was talking about that number and how to do it, and she wanted to make sure, and thankfully it was what I wanted as well, to make sure that it wasn't going to be kind of overly dressed up, you know, or decorated in a way, that this was going to be a movie that was going to be very kinetic and have lots of stylistic fireworks, but that at a certain point in the movie, and it's when she does that song, everything has to kind of come to a stop. And it has to just be about that song and that moment, and somehow that has to say something about everything else in the movie. It has to kind of be a thesis statement for the movie a little bit. So it was a lot of pressure when we shot the number, and we probably didn't do that many takes of it. You know, maybe about 9 or 10 takes of it. You know, but they're full takes where she's, I should add, it was all entirely done live. So she's singing live at every moment there and setting the tempo as well. So there's a little kind of earpiece in her ear, and Justin was off in the other room playing a piano. So there wasn't a pre-recorded track or anything for her to sing along to. She was actually, deciding when to go from dialogue to song. He was playing along like an accompanist would, playing along to her tempo. And she just kind of nailed it. I mean, I think we wound up using one of the early takes, but it was one of those moments where, just kind of on set, I think we all kind of knew that there was something sort of incredible happening, at least in my opinion. And yeah, she just really brought it.
Well, to everyone behind this wonderful, beautiful movie, bravo. And here's to the fools who dream, ladies and gentlemen. Damien Chazelle, thank you so much. Spread the word about La La Land.
Thank you, guys.